Now then, Coops, the Hungarian Grand Prix. I think we have to start at the very start and talk about Ferrari because it was very much of a tale of what wasn't it? As you sit there in the lovely Ferrari oversized shirt, which I'm a
Because
little bit jealous of because Olga has a white one. I don't have any of them, and I maybe should get my hands on one at
yes,
theraceworks.com between now and
yes.
Italy.
And
Um,
just a warning, they are oversized.
yeah,
This
they're
is a
huge.
large. I'm normally an extra large, and even this feels a bit big. In a good way. Not like, oh my God, it's like a tent. It's just, yeah. If you're an extra large, go down one.
Yes, definitely. Um, Ferrari then, obviously Charles Leclerc started on pole and Lewis Hamilton had an just atrocious weekend. But let's start with Leclerc. Phenomenal pole position, helped potentially a little bit by the fact that McLaren lost over half a second in pace between Q2 and Q3 as the conditions changed rapidly. But take nothing away from Charles, that was a great pole. Talk us through what happened in his race. Where did that pace go? Because there are a number of different stories and reasons and explanations for it.
Well, Ferrari might never probably tell you the real reason, if there is
Mm.
actually a real reason. Charles Leclerc in the car was really frustrated. Uh, and really quite animated towards his, I think it was things like, you guys, we're going to lose this. This is ridiculous. What is it you're playing at? All that kind of stuff. Uh, but Ferrari just don't have the pace for the McLarens, and I don't think there's anything that Ferrari could have done under normal circumstances that would have kept Charles Leclerc in the first place. I think he could have maybe kept himself on the podium if his pace was a wee bit faster, but the Mercedes is a pretty decent car. Um, it was reported apparently that there was some sort of chassis issue that came out
Mm.
in kind of the latter third of the race, which basically meant that that's how he lost his podium. But it's kind of a it's kind of the story of Ferrari's season. They just flatter to deceive, and once they
Mhm.
get themselves in good positions, they never stick it. Other than Hamilton getting the sprint one, which we figured out why, because they ran the car illegal, and
Pretty much.
then in the Grand Prix they got themselves disqualified anyway, so we know why they won that one. Uh, so yeah, it's just another match, another Grand Prix in the season of disappointment for Ferrari, to be honest.
It certainly was, and as you said, Ferrari might never tell us the full story as to what exactly happened. Obviously, Charles Leclerc was, as you said, extremely animated. He seemed to think that they had ignored something that he wanted, maybe on setup. There's some talk of it being like a front wing change at the pit stop that happened. Um, George Russell seems to think that they overinflated the tires in the later stint because they were worried exactly of that, of the plank wear being too low again, and they were going to get disqualified. And the only way they could jack the car up mid-race is to just overinflate the tires. I think that would better explain a lack of like a 2 second a lap distance, a 2 second a lap deficit that he was hit with in the second half of the race, which was insane. Um, but whatever the car issue that Charles was particularly animated about, and I saw a fantastic meme of it was basically the Star Wars crawl,
Yeah, so
but
that
using Charles Leclerc's insanely long radio message because it was that long. It's hard to see him beat up like that because all things considered, this was a really, really good weekend for Charles, and a podium was absolutely on for him.
it was until that latter part of the race, and you just slowly started to think, oh, they'll be lucky if they get the top four. They'll be lucky, I think they were lucky to get four. Uh, I mean, if the issues with the car kept in maybe halfway through the race and not as late as it was, they would have been lucky to stay in fourth place.
Mm.
Uh, it's just so you kind of start to lose reason or any kind of explanation for Ferrari's performances. And oh, is this it? Have they fixed it? Oh no, they're tenth. Oh, all right, okay, never mind. It's just, and we'll get on to Hamilton shortly, and it's really disappointing, and it's actually quite painful to watch. And you have a bit of empathy for Lewis, and his post race. conversations with Sky Sports was really bad and emotional, and it's I don't want to talk too much about Hamilton just now. We probably will in a minute, but yeah, it's bad. I don't
Well,
know what they do to fix it.
I have no idea either, and let's exactly move on to Lewis because obviously he started 12th and finished 12th.
Mm.
Um, he wasn't spectacularly far off the pace in Q2, but such was how close um, the field was. I mean, in Q1, the spread from first to 20th was less than a second. Yeah, 1:15.8 was Charles's time in Q2, in Q1, sorry. 1:16.2 was Albon's in 20th. So less than a second separated the entire field in Q1. So, and as we get into Yuki Tsunoda later, good result from him ended up being knocked out in Q1 because everything was so tight. But Lewis's Q2 time was a 1:15.7. And Charles Leclerc's top time, sorry, the top time in Q2 was Lando Norris's 1:14.8 because the McLarens ran away with it. But Lance Stroll was third there at a 1:15.1. So Lewis was only half a second behind second and third place and knocked out in 12th place. But he was only 3/10 behind Charles and knocked out. So like when you look at it that way, if you look at the times in isolation, that doesn't look too bad. But starts 12th, a track he absolutely loves, but loving a track does not make any difference on a track that's hard to overtake on when you're starting 12th in a car that you're not comfortable with. Where I bet he's delighted. Gavin Bortoleto said he hates the fact that it's the summer break now because he wants to keep driving. I'd say Lewis Hamilton is the happiest man in the world to not
Yes,
think about Formula One for the next month.
yes. He needs to. He need when you hear him saying he's useless and how do they fix the car? Nothing wrong with the car. Get a better driver. And this is a seven-time champion. Like you have to look at that, and if you've got a bit of empathy, you think, right, Lewis, you need to make sure you've got the right people around you right now. There's someone needs to throw an arm around you and just like, okay, let it out. If you want to have a snotty cry in someone's shoulder, have a snotty cry in someone's shoulder. That yes, they're professional athletes, but that was quite. It wasn't nice to see. It was
Mm.
very. You just were like, oh no, and I know there's a percentage of the world and the internet, social media's not great at certain points. It will probably have a good laugh at that. And, okay, that's your decision. But for the more normal people and more empathetic Formula One fans, even if you didn't like them, you kind of have to be like, oh, that's not good. Uh,
I'm not a Lewis fan, as I've said multiple times. I've nothing but the utmost of respect for him as a Formula One driver for everything he's achieved. You'd be insane and not a true Formula One fan to not think that way. I'm not a Max fan either, but I can purely respect what he's done. Um, and I know what Lewis did at the start of the year. He obviously had to hype up the fact that he was moved to Ferrari. It was a fresh start for him in a new team. Things were kind of souring a little bit in Mercedes. Um, but not that I necessarily put any blame to this on Lewis, but the whole portion of the internet who was like, oh, 8 times champion, 100%, 9 times champion, it's going to happen. He's going to win the championship this year. It's guaranteed. And he wins the sprint race, which was awesome, but as you said, technically illegal. They were found out for it the next day. It's all well and good, but he's struggling, he's struggling, he's struggling. While Mercedes are doing particularly well, where George Russell is doing very well this year, Kimi Antonelli is struggling in the other seat. It's not a second seat in Mercedes thing. It's the era of cars. It's the
mhm.
ground effect car. I've been saying this for years. I'm pretty sure for as long as I've been on this podcast, I've been saying that Lewis Hamilton just cannot get to grips with these super high ground effect downforce cars. They're slow to respond. They're much less twitchy and alive than the W11 for example like that. They are much more hard to get it's hard to explain what they're like, but whatever it is about them, it's the era of car that just doesn't suit Lewis Hamilton. And I said this last year, I said this at the start of this year, I'll say it again. Moving to Ferrari was never going to feckin' fix that. And anyone who thought otherwise, even Lewis, if he thought otherwise, was being very naive. I don't think Lewis thought otherwise. I think Lewis knows well that he's just struggling. and the opportunity for a fresh start and everything made total sense. That's fine. Next year, different story. These cars will not be ground effect cars. They'll be more reliant on the actual wing aero. Different story. Ferrari might steal a march, but I'm sorry. Anyone who thought that Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari was going to suddenly make these cars easy for him to drive, it didn't, it won't, and it will continue to not. I hope he gets better. He has a win. He has a podium in him. I'm convinced of that, and but I feel really really sorry for him that he's now resorting to beating himself up. And people shit on Lando Norris for years for doing that to himself.
Mhm.
I
He
don't
did it
want
all
people.
the time.
Yeah, I don't want people to shit on Lewis Hamilton for doing that to himself, but he needs to stop doing it.
If he's going to do it, he does it in private, and I don't mean that
100%.
in a, I don't mean that in he bottles it up. He goes with his very trusted circle. He has a good rant about himself. He calls himself an idiot. He calls himself useless to them because that bubble it stays there, and then they
Yeah.
can support that. Right there and then, like you could kind of sense that even the person, I think was it Lee McKenzie that was having a chat with him in the pen. I can't remember.
Rachel Brooks was
Was it
chatting to
Rachel
him for
Brooks?
Sky a lot. Yeah.
Sorry, Rachel. Uh, you could kind of sense that even she wanted to say something as a friend to him and not as
Mm,
a journalist. She had a, you could kind of sense that she was kind of taken aback by it and kind of was like wanted to throw the arm around him and have a wee, you're all right,
mm.
But she knew she had to be the journalist and there had to be that kind of step away. Uh, so yeah, it's scary to see someone who is a professional athlete who's done this since what 2007,
Hmm.
uh, and it's a high and done it at the peak. He came in at the top and stayed there, which I think a lot of people forget how much that takes for someone to stay at that level for as long as they have done, or in that expectation. For him to come out, and I don't remember him ever being that downbeat.
I've
Ever.
seen it. We've seen him be pissed off before. We've seen him take pot shots at the FIA and want to murder Felipe Massa for smacking into him at every other race in 2011. But I've never seen him like this before. And it
Yeah.
is really hard to watch. And he is a seven-time world champion. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, we didn't see Sebastian Vettel publicly beating himself up like this when Ferrari wasn't going his way, and particularly when Aston Martin wasn't going his way. We didn't see Michael Schumacher beating himself up like this when Mercedes were a bit crap and the car didn't suit him. It's not the attitude of a seven-time world champion, and it's a bit harsh to say, but he needs to be held to a higher standard. He needs to hold himself to a higher standard. I know he does. I know that's why he's so beat up at the moment because he expects so much more for himself. But
I
he is
think
the face of Formula One, and he has a lot of fans around the world who will not want to see him like that. Will be very, very empathetic towards him, but who are also going to, in the way they did to Lando Norris, absolutely drag him through the mud for for comporting himself like that in interviews, unfortunately.
yeah, and I think sometimes there's that element where the setup with the drivers have to go to the media also maybe has something to play on it because
Hmm.
my understanding is, and this might be wrong, and if you want to come into the comments and socials and just correct us, but they have a set time they need to go. They can't leave it too long. So clearly he's came out, he's had a quick debrief, showered, whatever he does, but he's still dealing with processing everything,
Hmm.
and then he has to go in front of the media. And you know yourself, like when you're like any of us were pissed off or angry, then somebody asks a question and you kind of snap, you react, and then you realise after, oh, hold on, actually, I didn't quite mean it in that way. But
Mm.
like we can deal with that because usually it's a very, it's just normal. We're not in the world in front of a camera with thousands of people. When they say something, that's it out there, that's it. You can't take it back in the way that we could, if I was to snap at you in a conversation, I could I say, sorry about that, I'm having a bad day. That's it. Doesn't go anywhere else.
Mm.
But the minute that someone like Lewis says something like that, and because he's Lewis Hamilton, it goes further, and it's remembered for the right reasons. It'll be remembered probably more for the wrong reasons because people will use that and beat him over the head with it. Is this the moment that he realised he was rubbish? You can kind of already see it
Hmm.
in the way it'll be used. And you're right, he kind of needs to think, right, I need to stop doing that and maybe not lie, but he has to have some. He has to have a way of saying things that aren't quite like that, and then deal with that personally with his bubble and
For sure.
and I think there has been comments, there's things going on in the background, and again, you can't really say that without saying what these are because people are going to then speculate, is it him? Is it personal life issues? Is it Ferrari or there's a power struggle? And then that's not going to be helpful because these are
Mm,
questions that journalists are then going to ask him. What did you mean by that? What does that mean? Does that mean this? And then you're spending more time defending things than dealing with what's coming or positives that might come. You're stuck in that negative kind of negative type of questions because you're
mm.
reminded, or remember when you said this then and you made this comment, and then he's back to remembering how he was. And, it's a hard thing to get out of when you put these things out there. I
Yeah.
think he done it before at the when it was Mercedes, didn't he? When he was like, "Yeah, there's reasons why I'll be half a second slower," and what do you mean by that? And he just kind of walked off, and you're like, "Mate, come on,
Yeah.
let's not play the
Yeah,
game."
and he's been in the game for long enough to know that a soundbite like that will make the media go absolutely nuts, and they'll never let him forget it.
Hmm.
So listen, hopefully this break now, it's what, 3.5 week break
Yep.
before Zandvoort. And unlike the last 3 week break we had, this is a full shutdown. There'll be no simulator work. You won't have to see anyone. You can go off on his holidays and do whatever you want. You can go home and sit in his apartment in Monaco with Roscoe for 2 weeks and not talk to any other humans. Might do him the world of good. For all we know,
Mhm.
maybe he's going to do more Italian lessons. We don't know. But a break, I'm sure. I'm sure he's delighted about it.